Right, let's go and talk now about Phantom Blade Zero, which is
Also
another
was
one
me.
that you played. So I have no idea what this is about. I can't remember. So you go and talk.
So this is an action RPG, and there's been a lot of confusion about this because people saw it and thought, "Oh, this looks like a Souls-like game," but it's definitely not a Souls-like. And the developers have literally had to put out statements for this to say this game is not a Souls-like.
Okay.
But people still seem to think that it is. And it's partly because there's a sort of stamina system and there's parries and blocks and heavy and light attacks and all this kind of stuff, which feels a little bit Soulsy. But it plays much more like a sort of character action game. Like it feels more like Ninja Gaiden to me.
Okay.
It's set... Oh god, I'm going to get this wrong now. I believe it's set in China. But I'm going to double check that because I do not want to get that wrong. Let me just get the basics of this right.
So you enjoyed this one?
Yeah. It's by S-Game, who I believe are a Chinese developer. I can't find the details here, but I believe it's set in China. It is, yeah, you can find it while I'm chatting. It's all super cool. You're this kind of, I guess, kind of ninja. Again, I'm going to get this wrong. You're going to tell me in a second that I'm horrifically wrong.
No. It is, I mean, S-Game is a video game developer headquartered in Beijing, China.
There you go. It's all very kind of dark and gritty in this sort of folklore-y kind of way. It's not super fantastical, though. There's fantastical elements. But it plays like an action game. You have a single sword, you've also got double swords, and you've got your light and heavy attacks. You can stealth up to things, and it has perfect parries and perfect dodges, which are on 2 of the triggers. And they are very brightly coloured. So you know if there's like a blue attack coming that you have to perfect parry it. And if you do that, then you sort of spin around them and stab them in the back. And if there's a red attack, it's like one that you can't parry, you have to dodge it. So you have to press a different button. So it's quite clearly sort of color-coded. Parrying is really powerful in this game, which feels a bit Sekiro-esque, which is about as close to a Souls-like as it gets. But in that sense, it plays kind of rhythmically. Like you have to parry all the different attacks and then get a perfect parry to hit them. But because of the color coding and the balance between parrying and dodging, to me, it actually feels quite similar to Stellar Blade, without the sexy lady in the middle of it all.
Shame.
You're playing as a cool Asian action hero guy, and yeah, it plays. So in that sense, it's not Soulsy. Like it just isn't. It is an action game. Now, I didn't get too much of a sense of the world exploration in this because the demo was essentially a small bit of training, and then it was 3 bosses that you played one after the other. So I didn't really get to do any exploration. If you die, there's no currency that you lose or anything like that, like you would in a Souls game. Also, the enemies don't respawn. So once you've killed them. So there's no like grinding or anything like that. So again, that's all very specific to Souls games. This doesn't have that. But it does have very cool bosses.
Yeah, I just looked in it on Reddit. Someone was saying that it's very much like Ninja Gaiden.
Yeah.
And apparently it's the second Phantom Blade game. The first
really?
one was like a mobile game that is coming soon to Steam, it says. But it has like optional gacha elements. And yeah, I think it was on mobile.
Okay.
And I don't know much about it.
This is pure action.
Yeah.
Phantom Blade Zero.
I think this is the big one.
Yeah, for sure. So I fought against 3 bosses, and it took me a moment at first to sort of get into the rhythm of it, which I think all of these action games do.
Oh yeah.
You know, it takes a second to get your head around the controls because it's dodging on dodging was on R1, and then the attacks are on the face buttons.
Yeah.
And because I've just played a lot of Elden Ring recently and have that in my head, I keep wanting to dodge on circle and then attack with the triggers.
Yeah.
So it was sort of back to front, which took me a moment to get my head around. But once I did, I kind of got into the rhythm of it and was like, this is really cool. You also have ranged weapons. So you get a bow and arrow and also this like gun that's like a sort of tiger head that like shoots these like explosive weapons, which is super powerful.
I saw that in the trailer.
Yeah, it's super powerful. It's really cool. So you've got all these different attacks, and it's so fast. It's so fluid. And yeah, you're just parrying everything. Like I said, it's a little bit Sekiro. But over the course of the 3 bosses, I kind of got into it. The 3rd boss was very cool but tricky. It was in this kind of building with these pillars and this kind of like military general kind of guy. And he had this really weird weapon that was like a chain with almost like a spiked helmet on the end of it.
Okay.
And he had this move that he does immediately when you go in, where he's spinning this chain and you can't hit him because he's spinning your attacks out the way.
Yeah.
And then he like slams this thing down and it basically hits you in the head and then rips your head off. Instant death.
Oh, wow.
So you have to like dodge this. And I was trying to time my dodge at exactly the right time and eventually managed to do it and then sort of got my combos in. And you have, I think it's called Chi, which is a bit like Neo.
Yeah.
Which is sort of your stamina. So heavy attacks and dodges use Chi, but light attacks don't. And your enemy also has Chi. So the more you parry them, they lose their Chi. And then once that's gone, they're stunned and you can do like a big combo against them. So that's why you really want to focus on your parrying. But you need to balance your own attacks, because if you run out of Chi, they'll wail on you and you'll be screwed. Yeah. So it's kind of a dance, basically, of, you know, one-on-one sort of between those elements. And I managed to do the demo, and it came up with a time at the end to be like, well done, you did it in 15 minutes or whatever. I think it was like 19 minutes or something. I was like, okay, cool. And the guy who was like running the stand came over and was like, oh, did you want to play it again on hard mode? And I was like, all right, I'll give that a go. And he sat next to me, and hard mode didn't feel that much more difficult. No, not it. It's not. No. It's not an easy. Don't get me wrong. It's not an easy game. I just mean the difference between normal and hard wasn't suddenly like massive. But I think because I'd got into the rhythm of it more by that point, because I'd practiced and I got to understand how important the parrying was and managing Chi. When you do the enemies again, it's like, well, I've done this boss, so I now know the rhythm of it. So I was able to whip through it really quite easily. And I did all 3 bosses in like 9 minutes. And he was like, oh, oh, wow, you're quite good at this. And I was like, I just sort of got into the rhythm of it. I think I think it was the first boss that had like a ranged attack that I purely by accident parried, which basically means you throw it back and it does loads of damage. And he was like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. I was like, there you go.
Wow.
And that last boss with the whip thing, that instant attack, there were these 4 pillars around the room, and he then said to me, oh, if you go next to the pillar, you can run up the pillar and jump off it, and that's how you dodge that attack. And I was like, now you're telling me that. So I died a couple of times even on hard against that one. But then it's just super cool kind of ninja, you know, you're running up
sounds really good.
Running up a pillar and leap off, and then you start parrying, and just it is some of the best combat I think that I've played in that kind of action game.
Brilliant. And is it like a reset, like start from the beginning of the boss? You don't have to do much running to it.
So, well, this is what I'm not sure about, because I think there are checkpoints. I don't want to say bonfire, because it's not a Souls-like, but there are checkpoints at specific things, whatever they are. Like I said, because this was just 3 bosses, it's hard to tell. But the checkpoint was not far from the boss. It was literally just outside. And the enemies don't respawn. So I don't think it's got that Soulsy thing of, right, back to the bonfire, work your way through. It doesn't have that. It's just a checkpoint and you just carry on. So that's why it feels much more like that sort of character action game kind of vibe. Like I say, I think I describe it as Ninja Gaiden meets Stellar Blade. Is sort of how I would describe it, really. If you like Stellar Blade, I think you'll settle into this quite easily. And like Stellar Blade, people were talking about how the normal mode of difficulty was kind of fun, but not too difficult. And then hard mode made it feel like Souls level difficulty. I think Phantom Blade Zero is going to have a similar differentiation between it. It's just really cool. And like I say, some of the best kind of action combat that I've played, which there were a couple of other games that we played, which I guess we'll talk about in a bit, which were sort of Soulsy action games, which for me were just nowhere near as good as Phantom Blade Zero.
Brilliant.
So I think if you like this kind of action game, then this is absolutely a game to look out for.
Next year?
I believe it's next year. Yeah. But very, very cool.
Brilliant, yeah. Good combat is... Like, if you don't nail that, then... Yeah, there's no point.